On May 31, 1223, a significant conflict unfolded on the banks of a river in present-day Ukraine. A formidable army of 80,000 warriors, composed of powerful Rus princes and their Cuman allies, was closing in on a smaller Mongol force of 20,000 men. This pursuit had lasted for 9 grueling days, spanning 200 kilometers across the vast steppe, and victory seemed certain for the larger allied forces. However, what transpired next at the Kalka River transformed into one of the most devastating military defeats of the Middle Ages. This account transcends a single battle, detailing a 5,500-kilometer, 3-year expedition spearheaded by 2 brilliant military strategists largely unknown to many. The question arises, how did 20,000 cavalry manage to overpower an army 4 times their size? And what made this extended reconnaissance mission so pivotal in shaping the destiny of an entire continent? To grasp the full scope of this narrative, we must rewind to 1220. The Mongol Empire had recently subjugated the Khwarezmian Empire, then one of Central Asia's mightiest empires. Major cities like Bukhara and Samarkand lay in ruins, and Shah Muhammad II was desperately fleeing across Persia, fearing death from exhaustion within a year. Intriguingly, this wasn't purely an act of savagery, but rather a meticulously planned strategic move. Genghis Khan adhered to a fundamental principle: never leave a lingering threat. As the Shah retreated westward, Genghis dispatched his 2 most exceptional generals, Jebe and Subutai, with a singular objective: to track him down and eliminate him. Yet this wasn't merely a mission of retribution. Subutai, a 45-year-old man from humble origins, the son of a blacksmith with no aristocratic lineage, made an unusual request to Genghis Khan: permission to continue their westward advance after accomplishing their primary mission. Not to conquer immediately, but to gather intelligence. Genghis granted this request, a decision that would profoundly alter the course of European history. This was not just a simple raid. It was the most extensive military intelligence-gathering operation of its era. With 20,000 cavalry covering 5,000 miles over 3 years, traversing what is now 15 different nations, their ultimate goal was to ascertain Europe's vulnerability to conquest. Before delving further into the campaign, it's essential to understand the caliber of these 2 commanders. Jebe, often referred to as the Arrow, didn't bear that name at birth. In 1201, he was a warrior in the army of Genghis Khan's adversary. During a skirmish, an arrow he loosed struck Genghis in the neck, nearly claiming the life of the great conqueror. His side lost the battle, and upon capture, instead of pleading for his life, he boldly declared, quote, "One Genghis Khan, rather than executing him, was reportedly amused." He remarked, quote, "2 Jebe was spared and given his new moniker, quote, 3, meaning, quote, 4. He transitioned from an enemy combatant to one of Genghis's 4 most esteemed dogs of war. Then there was Subutai, the brilliant commoner. If Jebe represented the sharp, decisive edge, Subutai embodied the strategic intellect. Born in 1175, also the son of a blacksmith named Jirgadai, his ascent to supreme command in an empire that valued ancestry and nobility was extraordinary. Subutai was different. At 14, he voluntarily joined Genghis Khan's army, following in the footsteps of his elder brother, Gelmi. He was given the seemingly modest role of a door guard to Genghis's royal yurt, a position that, despite its appearance, allowed him to attend all crucial strategic meetings. Subutai famously pledged to Genghis Khan, "I will deflect your enemies as felt fabric shields won from the wind," and he consistently delivered on this promise. At 22, he received his first command against the Merkit tribe. Instead of a direct assault, Subutai cleverly disguised himself as a defector, infiltrated the enemy encampment, and fed them misleading information that caused them to lower their defenses. He then coordinated a surprise attack with the main force, securing a complete triumph. From that point on, Subutai became Jebe's protege. The 2 complemented each other perfectly. Jebe, audacious and resolute. Subutai, cautious and analytical. In 1220, when tasked with pursuing Shah Muhammad, they were more than just two generals. They were a flawlessly calibrated war machine. The expedition commenced in Persia in the winter of 1220. Shah Muhammad was constantly on the move, and Jebe and Subutai pursued him, but without undue haste. They understood a crucial fact. Hunting the Shah was merely a pretext. The genuine objective was to gather intelligence. They meticulously studied the construction of Persian cities, charted trade routes, identified regional rivalries, determined who could be swayed and who would resist to the very end. They plundered Ray, burned Zanjan, and inflicted a similar fate on Kazvin. However, upon reaching Tabriz, one of Persia's richest cities, an intriguing event occurred. Aktug'a, the ruler of Azerbaijan, dispatched envoys with an offer, a substantial tribute of money, textiles, and, most importantly, numerous horses. Subutai and Jebe accepted this proposal. Why? Because they had no need to destroy Tabriz, they required provisions. By paying this ransom, Aktug'a had inadvertently financed the remainder of their expedition. This illustrates a key aspect often misunderstood about the Mongols. They were not always indiscriminately brutal, but were, in fact, highly calculating. When a city yielded and demonstrated its usefulness, it remained undisturbed. Conversely, resistance, as seen with Hamadan, meant a grim fate. Initially surrendering earned a reprieve. A second act of defiance, however, resulted in total annihilation. This established a stark message: cooperate for survival, resist, and perish. Early in 1221, Shah Muhammad succumbed to exhaustion on a secluded island in the Caspian Sea, marking the successful completion of the primary objective. Yet, Subutai and Jebe did not retrace their steps. Instead, they veered north. Their invasion targeted Georgia, a formidable Christian kingdom steeped in a proud military heritage. In January or February of 1221, they confronted a combined Georgian-Armenian force numbering 30,000. Jebe orchestrated an ambush with 5,000 troops, while Subutai's main contingent simulated a retreat. When the Georgian cavalry pursued and routed the Turkmen units, Jebe sprung his trap. King George IV suffered mortal wounds and passed away soon after. Georgia was subsequently plundered. In March, the invaders returned to Azerbaijan and laid siege to Moraga. Employing a calculated ruthlessness, they forced prisoners to act as human shields during each assault. The city fell, and most of its inhabitants were massacred. What followed was perhaps the most daunting challenge: traversing the Caucasus Mountains in the dead of winter. They arrived at Derbent, a crucial gateway city. Rather than initiating a siege, Subutai engaged in negotiations, offering to spare the city if it provided 10 guides to lead them through the mountains. The city agreed, but to guarantee the guides' loyalty, the Mongols executed one in front of the others, sending an unequivocal message: no trickery would be tolerated. The Caucasus crossing proved costly, necessitating the abandonment of their siege equipment, and hundreds perished from the cold. However, upon emerging on the northern side, they found themselves in completely new territory: the Pontic-Caspian steppe, a dominion of nomadic tribes. Here, Subutai would execute one of history's most brilliant diplomatic and military maneuvers, specifically on the northern slopes of the Caucasus. In early 1222, Subutai and Jebe encountered a colossal alliance comprising the Alans, Circassians, and Kipchaks, also known as Cumans, collectively numbering approximately 50,000 warriors. A Mongol cavalry force of 20,000, already fatigued from scaling the mountains, now faced an adversary 2.5 times its size. Most commanders would have opted to avoid battle, but Subutai was no ordinary general. He dispatched envoys to the Kipchaks with a straightforward proposition. Quote, "The Kipchaks deliberated and eventually acquiesced. When they deserted the alliance, the Alans and Circassians suddenly found themselves exposed. The Mongols then attacked and vanquished them separately. But then came the unforeseen betrayal. Subutai turned his forces upon the Kipchaks. Despite their prior agreement, the brutal lesson was clear. In warfare, promises hold weight only as long as they serve a purpose. 2 Cuman armies were obliterated. The remaining survivors, led by Khan Khotan, fled westward. And this is where the main narrative truly begins. In the spring of 1223, Khan Khotan reached Kiev, not empty-handed. He presented gold, silver, exquisite silks from the east, and slave girls. More critically, he delivered a stark warning. Khotan possessed familial ties with the Rus. His daughter was married to Prince Mstislav Mstislavich of Galicia, a formidable warrior known as the Bold. Mstislav the Bold consequently summoned the Rus princes. However, a significant obstacle emerged. Kievan Rus was not a unified entity, but a loose confederation of rival principalities. Kiev, under the rule of Mstislav III Romanovich, had once been the epicenter of power but had since weakened. Galicia Volhynia, under Mstislav the Bold's leadership, was gaining prominence. Chernigov, Smolensk, and Vladimir Suzdal each pursued their own agendas. This internal disunity was poised to precipitate disaster. While the Rus princes deliberated, Subutai sent his first emissaries. "We have no dispute with the Rus. Our conflict is solely with the Cumans, who initiated hostilities. Let them be. We might even share Cuman territory with you." This was a shrewd offer, as Subutai understood a crucial fact. His army, numbering only 20,000, faced a potential allied force of 80,000. He wished to avoid a direct confrontation, at least for the moment. However, the Rus princes committed their initial blunder. They executed the envoys. In Mongol culture, this was one of the gravest transgressions imaginable, mirroring Shah Muhammad II's killing of Genghis Khan's envoys, which led to the downfall of an entire empire. Subutai dispatched a second delegation. _____11___ the Rus princes responded by mobilizing their armies. 80,000 men, comprising heavy Russian cavalry clad in iron armor, light Cuman cavalry with bows, and infantry armed with axes and spears. On paper, it was an overwhelming force. Yet, one critical flaw existed: a lack of unified command. Mstislav the Bold advocated for immediate, aggressive, and decisive action, driven by his impatience. Mstislav III of Kiev, in contrast, urged caution. Consolidate forces, assess the enemy's strength, and then commit to battle. However, neither possessed authority over the other, allowing each prince to act according to his own judgment. This was precisely the scenario Subutai had envisioned. In early May 1223, the combined Rus-Cuman forces embarked on a significant logistical undertaking, crossing the Dnieper River with 80,000 men by lashing boats together to form bridges. Their march eastward followed the Zalosny Way across the steppe, where they eventually encountered the Mongol army, or, more precisely, its rear guard. Subutai had strategically left 1,000 men under Officer Hamabek as a lure. Mstislav the Bold, with his cavalry, immediately crossed the river to engage this detachment. Despite a hail of Mongol arrows, the superior numbers of the Rus force proved decisive, resulting in the elimination of all 1,000 Mongols. The Rus considered this a victory, celebrating with cheers. Yet this outcome was exactly what Subutai desired, as it instilled Mstislav the Bold with unwarranted confidence, making him believe the Mongols were weak and fearful after their seemingly effortless triumph. Without hesitation, he initiated a pursuit as the Mongols feigned a panicked retreat. This was not a flight born of fear, but a masterful tactical maneuver, the classic Mongol feigned retreat. For 9 days, covering 200 miles, the Mongol forces withdrew eastward. They did not vanish, however, opting instead for continuous, small-scale hit-and-run attacks, peppering the flanks with arrows, killing a few men, then disappearing, never engaging in a standing fight, and preventing the Rus from consolidating their forces. The brilliant aspect of this strategy was that each minor engagement bolstered Mstislav's resolve to continue the chase, convinced the Mongols were on the verge of breaking. After 9 days traversing the steppe, the Rus forces found their supplies dwindling, horses exhausted, and soldiers weary and ill-tempered. Their formation had stretched thin, with units moving at disparate speeds. The 80,000-man army had lost its cohesion, transforming into a long, drawn-out column with units separated by miles. Crucially, they were blinded by their determination to pursue. On May 30th, they arrived at the Kalka River, a shallow stream historically identified as the modern Kalchik River, which flows into the Sea of Azov. It was here that circumstances dramatically shifted. At dawn on May 31st, 1223, Subutai and Jebe ceased their retreat. 20,000 Mongol cavalrymen were arrayed on the Kalka River's eastern bank, ready for battle. Mstislav the Bold observed them from the opposite bank, recognizing this as the confrontation he had anticipated. He promptly ordered his heavy cavalry to cross the river. However, a second critical error unfolded. Mstislav III of Kiev, the more cautious commander, advocated for waiting until the entire army had consolidated before launching an attack. A tense war council ensued, marked by heated debates, but with no single individual holding ultimate command. The outcome was a divided army. Mstislav the Bold, accompanied by the Cuman cavalry, crossed the river, while Mstislav of Kiev remained behind, establishing a fortified camp on a nearby hill ringed with wagons and sharpened stakes. This division of the enemy was precisely what Subutai wanted. As the Rus heavy cavalry and Cuman light cavalry forded the shallow Kalka, they brimmed with confidence, launching a head-on assault aimed at shattering the Mongol lines through sheer force. Initially, they overwhelmed a Mongol rearguard, scattering it and creating the impression of a breakthrough. Yet, this was another ruse. Jebe and Subutai had positioned their troops to exploit such aggressive advances. As the Rus Cuman cavalry charged, Mongol forces suddenly counterattacked from both flanks. The Mongols attacked with what chronicles describe as their characteristic ferocity, striking both head-on and from the sides. Arrows rained down, and Mongol cavalry charged at terrifying speeds. The Cumans, facing the same army that had previously vanquished them, panicked and fled. In their hasty retreat, they crashed through the Rus ranks behind them, causing utter pandemonium. The Mongols surged through this newly created gap as water breaks through a dam. The Rus vanguard was decimated before the second wave even had a chance to deploy on the battlefield. Mstislav the Bold, grasping the full extent of the catastrophe, attempted to withdraw. He and some cavalry managed to escape, fleeing back towards the Dnieper. During the pursuit back to the river, 6 other princes perished, but Mstislav III of Kiev remained in his fortified camp. Subutai divided his forces. One contingent encircled Mstislav's camp, while the remainder pursued the retreating Rus army. Mstislav's camp was strategically situated in a strong defensive position, protected by a circle of wagons and sharpened stakes. The steep slopes of the hill prevented a mounted Mongol assault. Consequently, the Mongol warriors dismounted and attacked on foot. The Rus warriors, sheltered behind and atop their wagons, repelled multiple assaults. The Mongols attempted to hook and pull the wagons apart, while the Rus warriors stabbed and slashed at them from above. Crouched behind shields and wagons, the Rus successfully neutralized the Mongol archery. For 3 days the Mongols attacked, and for 3 days Mstislav III held his ground. But then the Mongol commanders extended an offer: surrender. An offer was extended, safe passage in exchange for relinquishing all weapons, flags, and possessions. Exhaust. Such decisions, made at pivotal junctures, influenced the course of life for countless individuals across generations. You too are confronted with personal decisions. While they might not carry the same magnitude as military confrontations, their significance remains. What will be your resolution? Should you have found this presentation compelling, consider pressing the like icon, becoming a subscriber to this channel, and activating notifications to ensure you don't overlook upcoming remarkable historical narratives. Furthermore, I invite you to share in the comments section which particular insight from Subutai and the Kalka River campaign left the greatest impression on you. We appreciate your viewership.